There are over 60 different brands of foam hiding in today's performance shoes, from the EVA of Nike Phylon to the Peba and Thermoplastics and Leaning Super Boom and Adidas Ultra Boost. I deconstructed them all so you can finally understand what's really going on under your foot and really make the choice of what is right for you. By the end of this video, you may really start to rethink what actually matters to you underfoot. So, let the foam wars begin, and let them begin with by far the most common foam we're still seeing these days, and that is EVA. Now, EVA stands for ethylene vinyl acetate. It's a compression or injection molded closed cell foam that's been used for decades in athletic shoes. And compared to previous eras of shoes, it is relatively lightweight, or really I should say it was considered lightweight until newer foams started coming to market, ones we'll see later in the video. And if you pay attention at all to, a lot of these brands' websites, you'll see they do make a distinction between compression molded and injection molded EVA. And there are big differences between compression molded EVA and injection molded EVA you need to know about. Compression molded is by far still the most common. It is where EVA pellets are compressed into a pre-shaped mold, then that mold is heated under really high pressure, and that causes those pellets to expand and fuse. Then that mold is rapidly cooled, allowing that foam to retain its shape. Now remember, EVA just in and of itself is pretty good at holding shape, but the compression molding makes it even more dense and durable versus injection molded. Now, injection molded EVA is where EVA pellets are melted in kind of like an injection molding machine, right? Like a liquid gun. Then that molten liquid material is injected into a mold. Then it's rapidly cooled. This creates a much lighter and softer foam versus compression molded EVA. And in terms of brands, honestly, you'll find EVA in just about every single brand's shoe in some line or another, from Nike Phylon to Saucony. A lot of tennis and pickleball shoes are still using it. And the reason you see, almost like I said, every brand still use EVA, why they love it so much, it's cheap, it's easy to mold, and it can be tuned to offer just about any density and feel you want. Plus, you can now blow it with gas to make it quote-unquote supercritical and give it additional properties like more bounce while decreasing its weight or give it more shock absorption. EVA is incredibly side-to-side stable, on par with foams that cost magnitudes of order more to manufacture. So now if you blow it with, say, nitrogen, now you've got the best side-to-side stable foam, but also it's now more bouncy, maybe a little bit more durable of a foam, or just tuned to whatever you want. The problem though with EVA really comes down to weight and durability. It's not super heat stable either, so it'll perform different at different temperatures, and it can start to feel like a brick after a while, especially compressing it during use. But like I said, the newer supercritical EVAs are actually starting to solve for this. And so talking about the best formulations of EVA with specific brands, honestly, if we were gonna talk about EVA, I could sit here all day, because like I said, there's just so many different models of EVA. I'll say right now, my favorite EVA is Fresh Foam X. I feel like it is just tuned to the perfect combination of feel, of shock absorption. It kind of does everything well, especially for court sports. Now, Nike also has quite a few formulations of EVA, starting from Phylon, which is kind of the grandfather of all modern day performance EVAs. That has now gone into Cushlon, which is a rubberized EVA, so it's a little bit lighter, a little bit bouncier. To me, it's not as durable as Phylon, but I think as Cushlon gets, further and further down the road, it probably will get, on par, if not more durable than Phylon. So, like I said, Bounce Foam, in terms of Adidas, is another one, Bounce Pro. All these companies, like I said, have kind of like their signature EVA. All right, next up is ETPU. Now, ETPU stands for Expanded Thermoplastic Polyurethane. This is a foamed, usually open cell version of TPU that undergoes an expansion process using gas infusion, like gases like nitrogen and CO2. This is also a very, very common foam in pretty much all types of performance shoes, from running all the way to court sports. And if you're wondering what is the difference between open and closed cell foams, open cell foam lets air move through the cells of foam. So it's squishier and harder to lock into a permanent form, because really all the cells of foam are interconnected. Closed cell foams lock air inside each cell, so it behaves more like a solid when molded, so it holds shape better and more consistently. This is why you see costumes often made of EVA, because it holds its shape so well. But in terms of ETPU, the foam's final form is composed of compartmentalized small beads or bubbles fused together. Some formulations of ETPU have these wide open compartments you can see easily with your own two eyes. Other ones are very small, very dense. Now you'll find eTPU most famously in Adidas Boost, as well as other foams like New Balance Fuel Cell, Nike React. And eTPU, frankly, was all Adidas wanted to talk about for a while. It was such a huge deal for them when Boost first came out. And the reason they marketed it so heavily is that eTPU is unreal in terms of versatility. First of all, it's heat stable, meaning it acts the same in a wide range of temperatures, and it's easy to dial in its weight based on density, so you can make it super light and squishy or dense and heavy. You can also make it act more like a shock absorber or more like a trampoline. Problem with eTPU is that it's expensive, and pound for pound, maybe not as bottom stable as some EVAs. Although just like EVA, if you're blowing it with certain gases, you can certainly now get new combinations of properties. So depending on the gas concentration, the foam can really have a wild variability. eTPU is crazy in terms of the spectrum of what you can get from it. But remember, when comparing eTPU to EVA, because they are the most common, EVA, like I said, molds to your foot a bit better, whereas eTPU resists it, but also it'll give you more durability than those foams that are also gonna mold to your foot, because if they're molding to your foot, they're also packing down. But in terms of brands of eTPU, the best and worst start and stop with Adidas, at least in my opinion. The worst, I'll go with the worst first. To me, Light Strike, I know Light Strike is a blended foam, but it is, a lot of it is eTPU. And to me, yeah, it is light, but that's about it. The next up would be Light Boost. And it's okay, it is light. I think it's much better than Light Strike. Feels a little bit like styrofoam. But then once you get into Boost and then Jet Boost, is when you start to get into foams that can literally do everything well. Boost, yeah, to me, it is not the most energy returning foam. To me, Boost is much more of a shock absorbing foam. But then when you go into Jet Boost and see what they can do with just a little bit of tuning, and it's got all the best shock absorbing properties of Boost, and then all this like crazy feelings of bounce and liveliness, and just feels really fresh underfoot, and it just feels like a trampoline, while not feeling like just ultra tension under your foot, right? Like there's plush feeling, and there's like that feeling of tension. And Jet Boost just, to me, is just it's one of the best foams ever made. And so as you can see, all the different iterations from Adidas, because they have just been on the forefront of using eTPUs, yeah, they're gonna have the best and the worst, kind of like Nike, right? They've got some of the best and some of the worst EVAs. Adidas is the same with eTPU, but you wanna know my favorite eTPU? By far, Jet Boost. All right, with that being said, let's get into the next foam, and that is OCPs. OCP stands for olefin copolymers. Now these are made, it's complicated. Olefin copolymer pellets are created via a copolymerization of ethylene and other alkenes. Now this produces a tailored closed cell molecular structure, which gives the foam a balance of like toughness and flexibility. This is why Under Armour, where is it? This is why Under Armour uses them for their Flow Foam combined mid and outsole, because it's got such good abrasion resistance. And not surprisingly, OCPs, olefin copolymers, look a lot like EVA on microscope because they got that same closed cell structure. But speaking of microscopes, and I learned this while we were actually developing our sandal with the different colorways, depending on the color of the foam, you can actually obscure what that foam looks like on microscope or even to the naked eye. So that's why sometimes the same foam in different shoes looks different. It's not the foam, it's the colorway. And the more color you inject into that foam, sometimes it'll start taking on a little bit different properties. So that's why sometimes the same foam will feel different in different shoes, they're different colored. But getting back to OCPs, like I said, OCPs are insanely durable foams for their weight. Pound for pound, they may be actually the best of all the bunch in terms of abrasion resistance and blunt resistance to force. And because of the copolymerization, they can be tuned for more bounce, more stability, more shock absorption, or, you know, if you want to spend some time on it, all the above. Now the problem with OCPs is that number one, they are really pricey to produce. They don't bond well with other foams. It just takes a lot to do. They aren't super plush feeling. They're much more of a tension feel underfoot. And compared to other bleeding edge foams like PEBA or eTPU, they don't have as much bounce. But if you want the stability of EVA in a lighter, more durable package, OCPs are fantastic. And before I get into specific brands of OCPs, I do want to make a distinction. There are OCP foams, olefin copolymers, and then OBCs, olefin block copolymers. I actually wrote this down here on my Apple Notes. Okay, just so I don't mess up the words here, or the letters. OBCs are a specific advanced subset of OCPs. So all OBCs are OCPs, but not all OCPs are OBCs, right? So one is a subset there. I'll put it up on screen because it twists my tongue sometimes. So just so if you see an OBC, it is a subset of olefin copolymers, right? So they're all kind of under that big umbrella. So no matter which one you see, they're made from kind of like that same base. And so if we're talking about specific brands of OCP, yeah, I think Li Ning and Light Foam Plus is fantastic. It is just, they use it in a way where they dial it down to a point where it is such a lightweight, super stable foam. But I think the company that has done the most with it is Under Armour with Flow Foam. I know that, you know, some people love the etching on the bottom for tread. Some people don't like it. You can't deny though, the kind of marvel of technology that it is. And once you put it on foot, whether you like it or you don't like it, it is different, it is unique, and it does have really a special feel in your foot, and it just does special things. All right, next up on the battlefield is TPE. TPE with one E stands for thermoplastic elastomer foam. Now, there is a large variability in this foam class, but it's generally a category of rubber-like plastics that combine the properties of, you guessed it, rubber and plastic. And if you're just really into chemistry, specifically TPE is made of styrene, butadiene styrene, and polypropylene. Not sure why you'd ever want to know that, but I'm sure there's some of you that would like to know that. It's made into a midsole foam by taking that molten TPE, introducing a chemical blowing agent, or just a physical gas injection. You can find TPE combined with EVA in Nike React X foam, or as a supercritical foam in the Xenon Extreme foam. Now TPE is very lightweight, it's super soft, it is both plush and springy, and if you've seen any of the insane hype over the React X Rejuvenate, you have witnessed that soft plush feeling hype firsthand. The problem with TPE is, frankly, it's not durable or stable. It needs to be caged with like a hard plastic or a carrier foam. So while it's new, it's fantastic. And if you have sufficient load sharing in the shoe, like a top-loaded shank or a peripheral plastic harness, yeah, it does great. But just don't expect a ton of containment or durability if it's just out there on its own. But in terms of brands of TPE, remember, Pebex or Peba, Pebex, whatever you want to call it, that is a type of TPE. But Peba behaves so differently, like it's so unique. I'm gonna make that its own category because versus all other TPEs, honestly, it's kind of its own thing. But in terms of TPE, in terms of the best of the bunch brands, I would say right now, yeah, Xenon with the Extreme Foam has been one of the only ones been able to actually cage it and make it stable, but also Li Ning and Super Boom, right, that's in the new 808 5 Ultra. Now Super Boom is a supercritical TPE, and honestly, it is unlike anything I've really ever seen before in terms of thermoplastic foam. It's got the bounce and the lightweight factor of all the more unstable thermoplastic foams, but yet it's starting to get into that more stable range that like regular Boom foam has. So it's not there yet, definitely still needs caged, needs containment, and needs some iterating. But in terms of like the future of thermoplastics and where I think you can start to see maybe some of the really violent bouncing super shoe foams get into basketball, tennis, pickleball, things like that, I think Super Boom is one of the roadmaps. There's a few roadmaps, but yeah, this stuff is insane. Now following up on TPE, the next foam up is TPEE with two E's, or thermoplastic polyester elastomer foam. Now it is very similar to TPE with one E, including how it's foamed, but instead of rubber in the mixture, it's polyester. So it's a bit more elastic and maybe a bit more durable. And TPEE is ultra lightweight and bouncy. It's not as plush of a feeling as TPE, but it's plush enough for what it is. The interesting is Adidas allegedly uses it for Lightstrike Pro and Lightstrike Pro Evo, found in the Audios line as well as the Pro Evo 1. That's that $500 super shoe that is feather light, and these are meant to be direct competitors to Nike's Alphafly and Vaporfly. And even though they have access to foams like Pebex or Pebex or however you want to say it, when they go to try to make the lightest super shoe ever and one of the most expensive ones ever, they went to TPEE instead. And like other, ultra lightweight foams, yeah, this is a really tough out to try to put in a court shoe, where side to side containment and stability is kind of like name of the game. But in terms of a running shoe or like an insert within a midsole, this foam can be kind of the best of the bunch in terms of energy return per gram or per pound or whatever measuring system you're using. Everybody, I think, if you're interested in shoes or you're interested in performance, at some point you should put on a pair of either Adios, or Pro Evos just to see what it feels like underfoot. It is a very unique sensation. And honestly, it's the one that I wanted to use most in the Zen sandal. This is rubberized EVA on the periphery, and then it's TPEE on the top. So, I mean, even like to me, this was a foam that I really wanted to use for a sandal because it gave, like I said, that perfect combination of energy return as well as enough plush feeling to where you're getting, like I said, right in that sweet spot. So if you're looking for brands, hey, all right, self-plug here, Xenon, the Zen foam, or like I said, the Adidas Lightstrike Pro or Pro Evo. All right, next up is a category of foams that I think we're gonna start to see a lot more of, at least I hope we're gonna start to see a lot more of in the future, and that is nylon foams. Nylon foam is made by blowing nylon elastomer pellets with a gas like CO2 or nitrogen. It makes this insane rebounding closed cell foam midsole with the best properties of EVA, eTPU, and PEBA. But right now, the number of brands using nylon is pretty limited. 361 CQT Extreme is the example that comes to my mind. I think simply because it's expensive, it isn't the most plush foam on the planet. It's not uncomfortable by any means, but it's definitely a performance first foam. It just takes a lot right now to kind of get it in that window of like real plush comfort plus real performance. The nice thing about nylon though is that it can be a lot more side to side stable and containing than other similarly bouncy foams. Plus it's got a very similar feel to PEBA or TPEE, but like I said, that durability and temperature stability of something like Adidas Boost. And the reason I'm so confident and so high up on nylon foams is I'm already seeing the benefits of nylon composites in custom orthotics. And I have almost entirely switched to nylon composites in my practice, and it has been unreal seeing how good they are at capturing the best aspects of polypropylene and carbon fiber. All right, but moving on from the future into the past, let's just do a quick roundup of PU or polyurethane foam. This is what a lot of retros are still made from. It's stiff and heavy, but not always uncomfortable. Most modern day performance shoes don't utilize it because it's very heavy compared to what largely replaced it, which is EVA. It's also prone to breakdown, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen with your older shoes, and its energy return is, well, dismal. Although I will say when polyurethane is new, it does kind of feel pretty bouncy because it's got so much stiffness and snap that it feels like a diving board, but that quickly fades to just a kind of a brittle feeling compared to really any modern day performance foam. And as I'm sitting here editing this video, I realized I forgot to talk about the modern day polyurethane foams, which is like Ortholite as well as Anta and their Nitro Edge foam. Now these are very, very tuned polyurethanes. They are nothing like the retro polyurethanes. They behave a lot more like eTPU. It's just they took a little bit of a different way there. Now, the Ortholite foam, the open cell polyurethane, does so well in shoe insoles because they're not using a lot of it. It would get a little bit heavy in shoes if they use a ton of it, but in terms of energy return, in terms of durability for a small insert, it's like magnitudes of order better than anything else. And then Anta with Nitro Edge, you've seen what some of the Anta shoes can do, specifically Clay's line as well as Kyrie Irving's. So there are ways to get polyurethane to do outsized work and just to make it fantastic. The cons are expensive to do, and it takes a gas, right? You really have to blow with something to make it lighter so it's not super heavy. So the applications are sometimes different, right? Like Ortholite will make things for like the uppers of the shoes too, kind of inserts. So really what I'm talking about in terms of the brittle kind of foams, that's the old school polyurethane. But coming back into modern times, of course, who could forget about PEBA or its sibling, Pebex, which is just the same base foam as PEBA, just branded. Pebax, whatever you want to call it. I know, I've got a Pittsburgh accent. It's not going to change. And PEBA stands for polyether block amide. And this foam has gotten just as much, if not much more press than Boost due to its use in Nike Zoom X and the absolute firestorm that the Alpha Fly and Vaporfly kicked off in the super shoe running space. Funny thing is the firestorm that these set off was really over the carbon fiber plate and if that was legal or not, was dealing with the Zoom pods, but to To me, the midsole foam in these two was just as much of a quantum leap forward as anything else. See, PEBA is a block copolymer, meaning it consists of alternating hard and soft segments that give it a really unique balance of strength, flexibility, and of course, energy return. The hard segment of PEBA is polyamide, and it gives structural rigidity and durability. The soft segment is polyether, and that adds the elasticity, the flexibility, and the energy return. Now, the specific ratio of polyamide to polyether determines the actual property of the final foam structure. If there's more polyamide, it'll be stiffer, more stable. If it's more polyether, it'll be more flexy, bouncy, and lightweight. And that's the reason why the PEBA in leaning or way of wade shoes works so well in court sports, because it's tuned more for structural stability, and Zoom X works so well in running shoes because it's made for more pure energy return. It's also why Zoom X hasn't yet been a real success, in my opinion at least, in the basketball space in the GT Cut 3 or the Jordan 39. It's just too unstable. Yeah, it's light and fast and comfy, but it also has like next to no side-to-side containment. And that side-to-side comparison brings me to a question I get asked constantly, and that's why more companies don't use PEBA when it's got that insane bounce and it's feather light. And like other innovative foams, it's expensive. But more importantly, with PEBA, it's expensive to get right, meaning it's really temperamental, as we've seen with Zoom X, right? It's almost perfect for distance running and just downright mismatched for court sports. So you can't just throw PEBA or PEBX into a shoe and expect it just to magically make it better. It still has to be iterated. And with a foam, like I said, this temperamental, gotta put a lot of human hours into it, figuring out that foam. In the court shoe space, yeah, I mean, leaning kinda is still the gold standard with boom foam. You know, you could make an entire bed of this, and they do in a lot of their shoes, an entire bed of this, and it's just as stable as something like Boost is, right? And so you're getting the crazy bounce of the more unstable TPEs, right? Or the more unstable PEBAs or PEBXs, right? Like Zoom X and things like that. But you're getting the stability, right, of something like Boost. So really, I think until proven otherwise, this is still the gold standard in terms of court sports using a block amide foam or a PEBA-based foam. Knowing that there's all these different choices of foams out there, remember, there's just as many choices when it comes to customizing your own shoes. It's not just for top professionals or the people that have the highest level contracts at the highest level shoe companies. You can do the same thing at home with very inexpensive materials. If you want to learn how, I got this ebook right here you can check out on my website at footdoctorzach.com. It's got every single tip and trick I have ever learned in the over decade of experience I've had in customizing shoes. I leave nothing out. It is all my tips and tricks and all the things I have learned. Things that I've learned the hard way as well as the easy way. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description below. But remember, everything we just talked about up till now, we're just talking about base foams. Nowadays, companies are combining these foams to make some just incredible formulations, whether it be combining them during the foaming process, like Adidas did with Light Strike, combining EVA and eTPU, or On with Helion, combining EVA and OBCs, or making dual foam midsoles like New Balance does with Fuel Cell eTPU and Fresh Foam X, which is EVA. Or they simply make two densities of the same foam in strategic parts of the shoe, or stack them on one another like Nike does a lot of the times with Phylon. And if that didn't muddy up the water enough, like I said in the beginning of the video with the eTPUs, now you're starting to get this incredibly wide variability of each foam out there, with EVAs being blown with gas, different tuning of eTPUs. So now you've got a lot of eTPUs that perform almost exactly like PEBA does. Or you get EVAs that perform like OBCs, or OBCs that perform like TPE. I mean, nowadays you can't just go by the base foam out there. A lot of times it's what's the additive in it? Is it nitrogen? Is it CO2? How much nitrogen and CO2 is there? There's just, like I said, so much variability out there. And every single, it seems like, month, we're seeing a new variable out there. So it's a great time to be out there, right? There's so much choice. And like I said, at this point, a lot of them, whereas maybe a few years ago there were clear lanes, it is starting to meld together now that all these foams are starting to kind of meet in the middle. And that kind of brings me to the biggest elephant in the room in this video, and that is Nike Air. Now, Nike Air is not foam, so I will do that in a separate video. That's going to get its own treatment because of the evolution of Air, what it does, capable of, pros and cons. So make sure you're subscribed. Look out for that video because that is coming up very soon. And if I had to give my top 3 foams by brand, which specifically I like the most. Number 3, I would say, would be Jet Boost. Number 2 would be Fresh Foam X. And number 1 right now, Super Boom. And speaking of simple, straight answers, if you're looking for an answer as to if all the weird, wild rumors about low top shoes are true, make sure you click into this video right here. I'll see you in the next one.